Welcome, everybody. This is Alan with Daily Armour of God. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're all doing well. This is Reading the Bible in 123 Days, and we're on day 39. Today we'll be reading 1 Kings 4 through 9. So, we are going to learn more about Solomon and his reign. That's where we're at in the Bible. 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 1. So King Solomon was king over all Israel. And these were the princes which he had: Azariah the son of Zadok the priest, Elihoreph and Aiah the sons of Shisha scribes, Jehoshaphat the son of Eliud the recorder, Benaiah the son of Jehoiada was over the host, and Zadok and Abiathar were the priests, and Azariah the son of Nathan was over the officers, and Zabud the son of Nathan was the principal officer and the king's friend. And Abishar was over the household, and Adoniram the son of Abda was over the tribute. And Solomon had 12 officers over all Israel, which provided victuals for the king and his household. Each man his month in a year made provision. And these are their names: the son of Hur in Mount Ephraim, the son of Dekar in Makaz, and in Shalbim, and Bethshemesh, and Elon Bethhanan. The son of Hesed in Aruboth, to him pertained Sukkol, and all the land of Hepher. The son of Abinadab, and all the region of Dor, which had Taphath, the daughter of Solomon, to wife. Anna the son of Eliud, to him pertained Tanakh and Megiddo, and all of Bethshean, which is by Zartana, beneath Jezreel, from Bethshean to Abel-Meholah, even unto the place that is beyond Jokneam. The son of Geber in Ramoth-Gilead, to him pertained the towns of Jair the son of Manasseh, which are in Gilead. To him also pertained the region of Argob, which is in Bashan, 80 great cities with walls and brassen bars. Ahinadab the son of Edo had Mahanaim. Ahimaaz was in Naphtali. He also took Bashmath, the daughter of Solomon, to wife. Baana the son of Hushai was in Asher and in Eloth. Jehoshaphat the son of Paruah in Issachar. Shimei the son of Elah in Benjamin. Geber the son of Uri was in the country of Gilead, in the country of Sihon king of the Amorites, and of Og king of Bashan, and he was the only officer which was in the land. Judah and Israel were many, as the sand which is by the sea of multitude, eating and drinking and making merry. And Solomon reigned over all kingdoms, from the river unto the land of the Philistines, and unto the border of Egypt. They brought presents and served Solomon all the days of his life. And Solomon's provision for one day was 30 measures of fine flour, and 80 measures of meal, 10 fat oxen, 20 oxen out of the pastures, from 100 sheep, beside harts, and roebucks, and fallow deer, and fatted fowl. For he had dominion over all the region on this side the river, from Tipsah even to Azah, over all the kings on this side the river, and he had peace on all sides round about him. And Judah and Israel dwelt safely, every man under his vine and under his fig tree, from Dan even to Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. And Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots, and 12,000 horsemen. And those officers provided victual for King Solomon, and for all that came unto King Solomon's table. Every man in his month they lacked nothing. Barley also and straw for the horses and dromedaries brought they unto the place where the officers were, every man according to his charge. And God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding, exceeding much, and largeness of heart, even as the sand that is on the seashore. And Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the children of the east country, and all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all men, than Ethan the Ezrahite, and Heman, and Chalcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahol, and his fame was in all nations round about. And he spake 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. And he spake of trees, from the cedar tree that is in Lebanon, even unto the hyssop that springeth out of the wall. He spake also of beasts, and of fowl, and of creeping things, and of fishes. And there came of all the people to hear the wisdom of Solomon from all kings of the earth which had heard of his wisdom. 1 Kings 5. And Hiram king of Tyre sent his servants unto Solomon, for he had heard that they had anointed him king in the room of his father, for Hiram was ever a lover of David. And Solomon sent to Hiram, saying, Thou knowest how that David my father could not build a house unto the name of Yahweh his God, for the wars which were about him on every side, until Yahweh put them under the soles of his feet. But now Yahweh my God hath given me rest on every side, so that there is neither adversary nor evil occurrent. And behold, I purpose to build a house unto the name of Yahweh my God, as Yahweh spake unto David my father, saying, Thy son whom I will set up thy throne in thy room, he shall build a house unto my name. And therefore command thou that they hew me cedar trees out of Lebanon. My servant shall be with thy servants, and unto thee will I give hire for thy servants according to all that thou shalt appoint. For thou knowest that there is not among us any that can skill to hew timber like unto the Sidonians. And it came to pass when Hiram heard the words of Solomon that he rejoiced greatly, and said, Blessed be Yahweh this day, which hath given unto David a wise son over this great people. And Hiram sent to Solomon, saying, I have considered the things which thou sentest to me, and I will do all thy desire concerning timbers of cedar and concerning timber of fir. My servant shall bring them down from Lebanon unto the sea, and I will convey them by sea in floats unto the place that thou shalt appoint me, and I will cause them to be discharged there, and thou shalt receive them, and thou shalt accomplish my desire in giving food for my household. So Hiram gave Solomon cedar trees and fir trees according to all his desire. And Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 measures of wheat for food to his household, and 20 measures of pure oil. Thus gave Solomon to Hiram year by year. Yahweh gave Solomon wisdom as he promised him, and there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and they two made a league together. King Solomon raised a levy out of all Israel, and the levy was 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month by courses. A month they were in Lebanon, and 2 months at home. And Adoniram was over the levy. And Solomon had 70,000 that bare burdens, and 80,000 hewers in the mountains. Beside the chief of Solomon's officer, which were over the work, 3,300, which ruled over the people that wrought in the work. And the king commanded, and they brought great stones, costly stones, and hewed stones, to lay the foundation of the house. And Solomon's builders and Hiram's builders did hew them, and the stone quarrers. So they prepared timber and stones to build the house. 1 Kings 6. It came to pass in the 480th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month Ziph, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of Yahweh. And the house which King Solomon built for Yahweh, the length thereof was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof was 20 cubits, and the height thereof 30 cubits. And the porch before the temple of the house 20 cubits was the length thereof, according to the breadth of the house, and 10 cubits was the breadth thereof before the house. For the house he made windows of narrow lights, and against the wall of the house he built chambers round about, against the walls of the house round about, both of the temple and of the oracle, and he made chambers round about. The nethermost chamber was 5 cubits broad, and the middle was 6 cubits broad, and the third was 7 cubits broad. For without in the wall of the house he made narrowed rests round about, that the beam should not be fastened in the walls of the house. And the house, when it was in building, was built of stone made ready before it was brought thither, so that there was neither hammer nor axe nor any tool of iron heard in the house while it was in building. The door from the middle chamber was in the right side of the house, and they went up with the winding stairs into the middle chamber, and out of the middle into the third. So he built the house and finished it, and covered the house with beams and boards of cedar. Then he built chambers against all the house, 5 cubits high, and they rested on the house with timber of cedar. And the word of Yahweh came to Solomon, saying, Concerning this house which thou art in building, if thou wilt walk in my statutes, and execute my judgments, and keep all my commandments, to walk in them, then will I perform my word with thee, which I spake unto David thy father. and I will dwell among the children of Israel, and will not forsake my people Israel. So Solomon built the house and finished it. And he built the walls of the house within the boards of cedar, both on the floor of the house and the walls of the ceiling, and he covered them the inside with wood, and covered the floor of the house with planks of fir. And he built 20 cubits on the side of the house, both the floor and the walls with boards of cedar. He even built them for it within, even for the oracle, even for the most holy place. And the house, that is, the temple before it, was 40 cubits long. And the cedar of the house within was carved with knops and open flowers. All was cedar, there was no stone seen. And the oracle he prepared in the house within, to set there an ark of the covenant of Yahweh. And the oracle in the forepart was 20 cubits in length, and 20 cubits in breadth, and 20 cubits in the height thereof. And he overlaid it with pure gold, and covered the altar which was of cedar. So Solomon overlaid the house within with pure gold, and he made a partition by the chains of gold before the oracle, and he overlaid it with gold. And the whole house he overlaid with gold until he had finished all the house. Also the whole altar that was by the oracle he overlaid with gold. And within the oracle he made 2 cherubims of olive tree, each 10 cubits high, and 5 cubits the one wing of the cherub, and 5 cubits the other wing of the cherub. From the uttermost part of the one wing unto the uttermost part of the other were 10 cubits. And the other cherub was 10 cubits. Both the cherubims were of one measure and one size. The height of one cherub was 10 cubits, and so was it the other cherub. And he set the cherubims within the inner house, and they stretched forth the wings of the cherubims, so that the wing of the one touched the one wall, and the other wing of the other cherub touched the other wall, and their wings touched one another in the midst of the house. And he overlaid the cherubims with gold. He carved all the walls of the house round about with carved figures of cherubims and palm trees and open flowers, within and without. And the floor of the house he overlaid with gold, within and without. Wow, can you imagine that? A floor of gold. You know, when we read these passages, our minds tend to place a picture, but it's just like thinking about heaven. Our minds can't even comprehend what heaven will be like. Just like we can only get a small picture of what this temple is like. Just a small picture in our imagination. So just think of how amazing and glorious it was. Just like how amazing and glorious heaven will be like, we can't even comprehend how amazing it will be. Our imaginations just aren't enough to comprehend the glory of it. So the floor of the house he overlaid with gold, within and without. And for the entry of the oracle he made doors of olive tree. The lintel and the side posts were a 5th part of the wall. The 2 doors also were of olive tree, and he carved upon them carvings of cherubims and palm trees and open flowers, and overlaid them with gold, and spread gold upon the cherubims and upon the palm trees. So also he, for the door of the temple posts, he made for the door of the temple post of olive tree, a 4th part of the wall. And the 2 doors were of fir tree. 2 leaves of the one door were folding, and the 2 leaves of the other door were folding. And he carved thereon cherubims and palm trees and open flowers, and covered them with gold fitted upon the carved work. And he built the inner court with 3 rows of hewed stone and a row of cedar beams. In the 4th year was the foundation of the house of Yahweh laid in the month of Ziph. And in the 11th year, in the month Bul, which is the 8th month, was the house finished throughout all the parts thereof, and according to all the fashion of it. So was he 7 years in building it. Isn't that interesting? 7 popping up, 7 years. You see the number 7 a lot throughout the Bible. 1 Kings 7. But Solomon was building his own house 13 years, and he finished all his house. He built also the house of the forest of Lebanon. The length thereof was 100 cubits, and the breadth thereof 50 cubits, and the height thereof 30 cubits, upon 4 rows of cedar pillars, with cedar beams upon the pillars. And it was covered with cedar above upon the beams that lay on 45 pillars. 15 in a row. And there were windows in 3 rows, and light was against light in the 3 ranks. And all the doors and posts were square with the windows, and the light was against the light in the 3 ranks. And he made a porch of pillars. The length thereof was 50 cubits, the breadth thereof 30 cubits. And the porch was before them, and the other pillars and the thick beam were before them. Then he made a porch for the throne where he might judge, even the porch of judgment, and it was covered with cedar from one side of the floor to the other. And his house where he dwelt had another court within the porch, which was of the like work. Solomon made also a house for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had taken to wife, like unto this porch. All these were of costly stones, according to the measures of hewed stones, sawed with saws within and without, even from the foundation unto the coping, and so on the outside, toward the great court. And the foundation was of costly stones, even great stones, stones of 10 cubits and stones of 8 cubits. And above were costly stones, after the measures of hewed stones and cedars. And the great court round about was with 3 rows of hewed stones, and a row of cedar beams, both for the inner court of the house of Yahweh, and for the porch of the house. And King Solomon sent and fetched Hiram out of Tyre, and he was a widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a worker in brass. And he was filled with wisdom and understanding, and cunning work to all works in brass. And he came to King Solomon and wrought all his work. For he cast 2 pillars of brass of 18 cubits high apiece, and a line of 12 cubits did compass either of them about. And he made 2 chapiters of molten brass to set upon the tops of the pillars. The height of one chapiter was 5 cubits, and the height of the other chapiter was 5 cubits. And nets of checker work and wreaths of chain work for the chapiters which were upon the top of the pillars, 7 for the one chapiter, and 7 for the other chapiter. And he made the pillars in 2 rows round about the one network, to cover the chapiters that were upon the top with pomegranates, and so did he for the other chapiter. And the chapiters that were upon the top of the pillars were of lily work in the porch, 4 cubits. And the chapiters upon the 2 pillars had pomegranates also above, over against the belly which was by the network. And the pomegranates were 200 in rows round about upon the other chapiter. And he set up the pillars in the porch of the temple, and he set up the right pillar, and called the name thereof Jachin, and he set up the left pillar, and he called the name thereof Boaz. And upon the top of the pillars was lily work, so was the work of the pillars finished. He made a molten sea 10 cubits from the one brim to the other. It was round all about, and his height was 5 cubits, and a line of 30 cubits did compass it round about. And under the brim of it round about there were knops compassing it, 10 in a cubit, compassing the sea round about. The knops were cast in 2 rows when it was cast. It stood upon 12 oxen, 3 looking toward the north, and 3 looking toward the west, and 3 looking toward the south, and 3 looking toward the east, and the sea was set above upon them, and all their hinder parts were inward. And it was a handbreadth thick, and the brim thereof was wrought like the brim of a cup, with flowers of lilies. It contained 2,000 baths. And he made 10 bases of brass. 4 cubits was the length of one base, and 4 cubits the breadth thereof, and 3 cubits the height of it. And the work of the bases was on this manner. They had borders, and the borders were between the ledges, and on the borders that were between the ledges were lions, oxen, and cherubims. And upon the ledges there was a base above, and beneath the lions and oxen were certain additions made of thin work. And every base had 4 brassen wheels, and plates of brass, and the 4 corners thereof had undersetters. Under the laver were undersetters molten at the side of every addition. And the mouth of it within the chapiter above was a cubit, but the mouth thereof was round after the work of the base, 1.5 cubits, and also upon the mouth of it were gravings with their borders, 4 square, not round. And under the borders were 4 wheels, and the axle trees of the wheels were joined to the base, and the height of the wheel was 1.5 cubits. And the work of the wheels was like the work of a chariot wheel. Their axle trees, and their naves, and their felloes, and their spokes were all molten. And there were 4 undersetters to the 4 corners of one base, and the undersetters were of the very base itself. And in the top of the base there a round compass of half a cubit high, and on the top of the base the ledges thereof and the borders thereof were of the same. For on the plates of the ledges thereof, and on the borders thereof, he graved cherubims, lions, and palm trees, according to the proportion of every one, and additions round about. After this manner he made 10 bases. All of them had one casting, one measure, and one size. Then made he 10 lavers of brass. One laver contained 40 baths, and every laver was 4 cubits, and upon every one of the 10 bases 1 laver. And he put 5 bases on the right side of the house, and 5 on the left side of the house, and he set the sea on the right side of the house, eastward over against the south. And Hiram made the lavers, and the shovels, and the basins. So Hiram made an end of doing all the work that he made King Solomon for the house of Yahweh. The 2 pillars and the 2 bowls of the chapiters were on the top of the 2 pillars, and the 2 networks to cover the 2 bowls of the chapiters which were upon the top of the pillars, and 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, even 2 rows of pomegranates for 1 network, to cover the 2 bowls of the chapiters that were upon the pillars, and the 10 bases and the 10 lavers on the bases, and 1 sea and 12 oxen under the sea, and the pots and the shovels and the basins, and all these vessels which Hiram made to King Solomon for the house of Yahweh were of bright brass. In the plain of Jordan did King cast them, in the clay between Succoth and Zarthon. And Solomon left all the vessels unweighed, because they were exceeding many, neither was the weight of the brass found out. And Solomon made all the vessels that pertained unto the house of Yahweh, the altar of gold, and the table of gold whereupon the showbread was, and the candlesticks of pure gold, 5 on the right side, 5 on the left, before the oracle, with the flowers and the lamps and the tongues of gold, and the bowls and the snuffers and the basins and the spoons and the censers of pure gold, and the hinges of gold, both for the doors of the inner house and the most holy place, and for the doors of the house, to wit, of the temple. So was ended all the work that King Solomon made for the house of Yahweh, and Solomon brought in the things which David his father had dedicated, even the silver, and the gold, and the vessels, did he put among the treasures of the house of Yahweh. 1 Kings 8. Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel, and all the heads of the tribes, the chief of the fathers of the children of Israel, unto King Solomon in Jerusalem, that they might bring up the ark of the covenant of Yahweh out of the city of David, which is Zion. And all the men of Israel assembled themselves unto King Solomon at the feast in the mount Ethanim, which is the 7th month. And all the elders of Israel came, and the priests took up the ark. And they brought up the ark of Yahweh and the tabernacle of the congregation, and all the holy vessels that were in the tabernacle, even those did the priests and Levites bring up. And King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel that were assembled unto him were with him before the ark, sacrificing sheep and oxen that could not be told nor numbered for multitude. And the priests brought in the ark of the covenant of Yahweh unto his place, unto the oracle of the house, to the most holy place, even under the wings of the cherubims. For the cherubims spread forth their 2 wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubims covered the ark, the staves thereof above. And they drew out the staffs, that the ends of the staffs were seen out in the holy place before the oracle, and they were not seen without. And there they are unto this day. There was nothing in the ark save the 2 tables of stone, which Moses put there at Horeb, when Yahweh made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came up out of the land of Egypt. And it came to pass, when the priests were come out of the holy place, that the cloud filled the house of Yahweh. So that the priests could not stand to minister because of the cloud, for the glory of Yahweh had filled the house of Yahweh. Then spake Solomon, Yahweh said that he would dwell in the thick darkness. I have surely built thee a house to dwell in, a settled place for thee to abide in forever. And the king turned his face about and blessed all the congregation of Israel. And all the congregation of Israel stood, and he said, Blessed be Yahweh, God of Israel, which spake with his mouth unto David my father, and hath with his hand fulfilled it, saying, Since the day that I brought forth my people Israel out of Egypt, I chose no city out of all the tribes of Israel to build a house, that my name might be therein, but I chose David to be over my people Israel. And it was in the heart of David my father to build a house for the name of Yahweh, God of Israel. And Yahweh said unto David my father, Whereas it was thine heart to build a house unto my name, thou didst well that it was in thine heart. Nevertheless thou shalt not build the house, but thy son that shall come forth out of thy loins, he shall build the house unto my name. And Yahweh hath performed his word that he spake, and I am risen up in the room of David my father, and sit on the throne of Israel, as Yahweh promised, and have built a house for the name of Yahweh, God of Israel. And I have set there a place for the ark, wherein is the covenant of Yahweh which he made with our fathers, when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. And Solomon stood before the altar of Yahweh in the presence of all the congregation of Israel, and spread forth his hands toward heaven. And he said, Yahweh, God of Israel, there is no God like thee, in heaven above, nor or on earth beneath, who keepest covenant and mercy with thy servants that walk before thee with all their heart, who hast kept with thy servant David my father that thou promised him. Thou spakest also with thy mouth, and hast fulfilled it with thine hand, as it is this day. Therefore now, Yahweh God of Israel, keep with thy servant David my father that thou promised him, saying, There shall not fail thee a man in my sight to sit on the throne of Israel, so that thy children take heed to their way, that they walk before me as thou hast walked before me. And now, O God of Israel, let thy word, I pray thee, be verified, which thou spakest unto thy servant David my father. But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, the heaven and the heaven of heavens cannot contain thee, how much less this house that I have builded? Yet have thou respect unto the prayer of thy servant, and to his supplication. O Yahweh my God, to hearken unto the cry and to the prayer which thy servant prayeth before thee today, that thine eyes may be open toward this house, night and day, even toward the place of which thou hast said, My name shall be there, that thou mayest hearken unto the prayer which thy servant shall make toward this place. And hearken thou to the supplication of thy servant and of thy people Israel, when they shall pray toward this place, and hear thou in heaven thy dwelling place, and when thou hearest, forgive. If any man trespass against his neighbor, and an oath be laid upon him to cause him to swear, and the oath come before thine altar in this house, then hear thou in heaven, and do, and judge thy servants, condemning the wicked to bring his way upon his head, and justifying the righteous to give him according to his righteousness. When thy people Israel be smitten down before the enemy, because they have sinned against thee, and shall turn again to thee, and confess thy name, and pray, and make supplication to thee in this house, then hear thou in heaven, and forgive the sin of thy people Israel, and bring them again into the land which thou gavest unto their fathers. Now, if you really look into these verses, and if you've read the Bible before, this can probably be counted as a prophecy, because what happens? Well, if you've read the Bible before, you know, and we're going to read it, you know that after Solomon comes many evil, wicked kings, but there are a few good kings who turn to the Lord, or turn back to the Lord, and during those times, under all the wars that are going to be happening, they turn back to God, and God gives them rest. God gives them rest from all the different wars. But then when they turn away from him again, what happens? There's more wars, there's more evil. And so this kind of is like a prophecy about what's going to happen, and also the eventual downfall of Jerusalem, where they get taken away, killed and or taken away to Babylon. But what happens? We're going to see that they come back after 70 years. They're allowed to come back and rebuild the temple. So despite all the bad that they will go through, and they have gone through, when they come back to God and confess their sins and worship, start living for God and worship him, then God will bring them back and will bless them. So it's just amazing to see this if you've already read the Bible and you know what's going to happen. It's amazing to see these little bits of information here and there that kind of tie everything together. And what we've read so far, during the time of Judges, what happens there? It's the same thing. During the time of Judges, they would worship God. Eventually, they would fall away. They would get taken captive or oppressed. And then they would cry out to God. God would send in a judge to deliver them. And then they would have peace for a while until they fell away again. That's kind of the same thing that's going to happen here with the line of kings. But despite it all, God was with them. God allowed them to be punished, yes, but he was with them, just like he's with us. And he will allow us to be punished too. Because, like the Bible says, God chastises those whom he loves. He didn't love us, and we would never be chastised. Anyway, going back to 1 Kings 8:35. When heaven is shut up and there is no rain because they have sinned against thee, if they pray toward this place and confess thy name and turn from their sin when thou afflictest them, then hear thou in heaven and forgive the sin of thy servants and of thy people Israel, that they should teach them the good way wherein they should walk, and give rain upon the land, which thou hast given to thy people for an inheritance. If there be in the land famine, if there be pestilence, blasting, mildew, locust, or there be caterpillar, if their enemy besiege them in the land of their cities, whatsoever plague, whatsoever sickness there be, what prayer and supplication soever be made by any man or by all the people of Israel, which shall know every man the plague of his own heart, and spread forth his hands toward this house, then hear thou in heaven thy dwelling place, and forgive, and do, and give to every man according to his ways, whose heart thou knowest. For thou, even thou only, knowest the hearts of all the children of men. That they may fear thee all the days they live in the land which thou gavest unto our fathers. Moreover, concerning a stranger that is not of thy people Israel, but cometh out of a far country for thy name's sake, for they shall hear of thy great name, of thy strong hand, and of thy stretched out arm, when he shall come and pray toward this house. Now, isn't that an interesting verse? If you really dig deep, this could also be another prophecy of what's going to happen. What happens? They get taken away to Babylon. They come back. Many years pass up to Jesus' birth. Well, what does Jesus do? He comes to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? But when he dies, he calls the apostles to spread the word to all nations, to Gentiles. He gives the Gentiles a chance to be saved, a chance for salvation. Isn't that interesting? What does it say here in verse 41? Moreover, concerning a stranger that is not of thy people Israel, but cometh out of a far country for thy name's sake. For they shall hear of thy great name, and of thy strong hand, and of thy stretched out arm, when he shall come and pray toward this house. Isn't that amazing? That is amazing that Solomon here is praying for this. And what do we see hundreds of years later, we see Christ die on the cross for all. And he tells his apostles that they need to go to the four corners of the earth and spread the gospel, the good news. And it gives all people, Gentiles, and the house of Israel alike, a chance towards salvation. That's just amazing. 1 Kings 8:43. Hear thou in heaven thy dwelling place, and do according to all that the stranger calleth to thee for, that all people of the earth may know thy name, to fear thee, as do thy people Israel, and that they may know that this house which I have builded is called by thy name. If thy people go out to battle against their enemy, whithersoever thou shalt send them, and shall pray unto Yahweh toward the city which thou hast chosen, and toward the house that I have built for thy name, then hear thou in heaven their prayer and their supplication, and maintain their cause. They sin against thee, for there is no man that sinneth not. Isn't that interesting? This is Solomon talking here in the Old Testament. What do we see? What do we see later on down the line when Paul is writing? He's writing Romans 3:23. for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. It's crazy to see, not crazy, but amazing to see some parts, or a lot of parts of the Old Testament reflecting the New Testament, the New Testament reflecting the Old Testament. What do we see here? Solomon, way back here. There is no man that sinneth not. That's true. We have all sinned, fall short of the glory of God. Romans 3:23. So, if they sin against thee, for there is no man that sinneth not, and thou be angry with them, and deliver them to the enemy, so that they carry them away captives unto the land of the enemy, far or near. Man, here's some more prophecy, right? Carry them away captives. What does that paint a picture of? Many years, hundreds of years later, when they're carried away into Babylon. Yet, if they shall bethink themselves in the land whither they were carried captives, and repent, and make supplication unto thee in the land of them that carried them captives, saying, We have sinned and have done perversely, we have committed wickedness, and shall return unto thee with all their heart, and with all their soul, in the land of their enemies, which led them away captive, and pray unto thee toward their land, which thou gavest unto their fathers, to the city which thou hast chosen, and the house which I have built for thy name. Then hear thou their prayer and their supplication in heaven, thy dwelling place, and maintain their cause. So, for you have read the Bible already, this is a clear picture here. This is clear of what's going to happen when they're in Babylon. When they do get to Babylon, they are repentant of what they've done. And they do say this. They do say, we have sinned, have done perversely, we have committed wickedness. And what happens 70 years in their captivity, 70 years later, they get to go back and rebuild. That's just amazing to see. If you've read the Bible already, it's amazing to see these little bits, these nuggets of information that you may have missed the first time round. But hear thou their prayer and their supplication in heaven, thy dwelling place, and maintain their cause, and forgive thy people that have sinned against thee, and all their transgressions wherein they have transgressed against thee, and give them compassion before them who carried them captive, that they may have compassion on them. For they be thy people and thine inheritance, which thou broughtest forth out of Egypt, from the midst of the furnace of iron, that thine eyes may be open unto the supplication of thy servant, and unto the supplication of thy people Israel, to hearken unto them in all that they call for unto thee. For thou didst separate them from among all the people of the earth, to be thine inheritance, as thou spakest by the hand of Moses thy servant, when thou broughtest our fathers out of Egypt, O Lord Yahweh. And it was so that when Solomon had made an end of praying all this prayer and supplication to Yahweh, he arose from before the altar of Yahweh, from kneeling on his knees with his hands spread up to heaven, and he stood and blessed all the congregation of Israel with a loud voice, saying, Blessed be Yahweh, that hath given rest unto his people Israel, according to all that he promised. There hath not failed one word of all his good promise, which he promised by the hand of Moses his servant. Yahweh our God be with us, as he was with our fathers. Let him not leave us nor forsake us, that he may incline our hearts unto him, to walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments, and his statutes, and his judgments, which he commanded our fathers. And let these my words, wherewith I have made supplication before Yahweh, be nigh unto Yahweh our God day and night, that he maintain this cause of his servant, and this the cause of his people Israel at all times, as the matter shall require, that all the people of the earth may know that Yahweh is God, and there is none else. Let your heart therefore be perfect with Yahweh our God, to walk in his statutes, and to keep his commandments as at this day. And the king and all Israel with him offered sacrifice before Yahweh, and Solomon offered a sacrifice of peace offerings, which he offered unto Yahweh, 22,000 oxen, and 120,000 sheep. So the king and all the children of Israel dedicated the house of Yahweh. The same day did the king hallow the middle of the court that was before the house of Yahweh, for there he offered burnt offerings and meat offerings, and the fat of the peace offerings, because the brassen altar that was before Yahweh was too little to receive the burnt offerings, and the meat offerings, and the fat of the peace offerings. And at that time Solomon held a feast, and all Israel with him, a great congregation, from the entering in of Hamath unto the river of Egypt, before Yahweh our God, 7 days, and 7 days, even 14 days. On the 8th day he sent the people away, and they blessed the king, and went unto their tents joyful and glad of heart for all the goodness that Yahweh hath done for David his servant, and for Israel his people. 1 Kings 9. And it came to pass, when Solomon had finished the building of the house of Yahweh, and the king's house, and all Solomon's desire which he was pleased to do, that Yahweh appeared to Solomon the second time, as he appeared unto him at Gibeon. And Yahweh said unto him, I have heard thy prayer and thy supplication that thou hast made before me. I have hallowed this house which thou hast built, to put my name there forever, and mine eyes and my heart shall be there perpetually. And if thou wilt walk before me as David thy father walked, in integrity of heart and in uprightness, to do according to all that I have commanded thee, and wilt keep my statutes and my judgments, then I will establish the throne of thy kingdom upon Israel forever, as I promised to David thy father, saying, There shall not fail thee a man upon the throne of Israel. But if ye shall at all turn from following me, ye or your children, and will not keep my commandments and my statutes which I have set before you, but go and serve other gods, and worship them, then will I cut off Israel out of the land which I have given them, and this house which I have hallowed for my name will I cast out of my sight, and Israel shall be a proverb and a byword among all people. And at this house which is high, every one that passeth by it shall be astonished, and shall hiss, and they shall say, Why hath Yahweh done thus unto the land and to his house? And they shall answer, Because they forsook Yahweh their God, who brought forth their fathers out of the land of Egypt, and have taken hold upon other gods, and have worshipped them, and served them. Therefore hath Yahweh brought upon them all this evil. And it came to pass, at the end of 20 years, when Solomon had built the 2 houses, the house of Yahweh and the king's house. Now Hiram the king of Tyre had furnished Solomon with cedar trees and fir trees, and with gold according to all his desire, that then King Solomon gave Hiram 20 cities in the land of Galilee. And Hiram came out from Tyre to see the cities which Solomon had given him, and they pleased him not. And he said, What cities are these which thou hast given me, my brother? And he called them the land of Cabul unto this day. And Hiram sent to the king 60 talents of gold. And this is the reason of the levy which King Solomon raised for to build the house of Yahweh, and his own house, and Milo, and the wall of Jerusalem, and Hazor, and Megiddo, and Gezer. For Pharaoh king of Egypt had gone up and taken Gezer, and burnt it with fire, and slain the Canaanites that dwelt in the city, and given it for a present unto his daughter, Solomon's wife. And Solomon built Gezer, and Beth-horon, the nether, and Baalath, and Tadmor, and the wilderness in the land, and all the cities of the store that Solomon had, and cities for his chariots, and cities for his horsemen, and that which Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem and in Lebanon, and all the land of his dominion. And all the people that were left of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, which are not of the children of Israel, their children that were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel also were not able to utterly destroy, upon those did Solomon levy a tribute of bondservice unto this day. But the children of Israel did Solomon make no bondmen, but they were men of war, and his servants, and his princes, and his captains, and his rulers of his chariots, and his horsemen. These were the chief of the officers that were over Solomon's work, 550 which bare rule of the people that wrought in the work. But Pharaoh's daughter came up out of the city of David unto her house which Solomon had built for her. Then did he build Milo. And 3 times in a year did Solomon offer burnt offerings and peace offerings upon the altar which he built unto Yahweh, and he burnt incense upon the altar that was before the Yahweh. So he finished the house. King Solomon made a navy of ships in Ezon Geber, which is beside Eloth, on the shore of the Red Sea, in the land of Edom. And Hiram sent in the navy his servants, shipmen, and had knowledge of the sea, with the servants of Solomon. And they came to Ophir, and fetched from thence gold 420 talents, and brought it to King Solomon. Okay, well, that's going to be it for today's reading. There was some great stuff that we read in today's reading. Prophecy that we could see after reading the Bible already, and we read it again. We see all these bits of information that we may have missed the first time around, and it's just amazing to see. Amazing to see that Solomon did prophesy for what's going to come upon the children of Israel. Unfortunately, it's sad to see the whole picture of them falling away from God and serving all the pagan gods and doing the sick abominations that I'm not even going to say. But yeah, it's sad to see. But despite all that, we know that God was with them. God is with us no matter what we go through. And all he wants is for us to turn back to him when we fall away. He wants us to learn from our mistakes and follow his ways and not serve other gods. So, thanks for joining me, and I hope you guys have a great evening, morning, noon, wherever you're at. Remember to put God first in everything you do. Have faith in him, have trust in him, and wait upon him, and you'll never be sorry. And God willingly, we'll see you tomorrow with more Bible reading. So, thank you, and take care.